In the year when the black swans stopped nesting near the Marek estate, a girl was given in marriage before her voice had settled. She bore 7 children, but never held a single one. This is the story they tried to erase. The old woman's voice trembled as she spoke. Her granddaughter sat by the fire, listening intently. Outside, the wind howled like a hungry wolf, whipping snow into the air and making it impossible to see the swans on the lake. They came for me in the middle of the night. The old woman whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I heard screams and then the sound of a struggle. When I turned 18, I was married off to a man I didn't know. I had no choice. It was arranged by my father. He wanted me out of the house. He didn't want me anymore. The old woman's hands were gnarled and twisted, like the branches of a tree. She reached out and touched her granddaughter's face. "Don't let this happen to you," she said, her voice hoarse. "Don't let them take your voice." The granddaughter shivered, not just from the cold, but from the stories that her grandmother told. Stories of a dark secret that the family had tried to hide for years. They said her name was Alma, a name soft as milk, fleeting as mist. No one remembers where she was born, only that the river behind her village turned red, each spring not from blood, but from the blossoms that fell like drowned prayers. She was 12 when the men came with their fat horses and gold-tipped sticks, counting goats, not birthdays. Her father, with skin like dry wood and eyes like soot, nodded 3 times. That was all it took. A girl became a wife, a lamb, delivered to the altar. The wedding was held in the crumbling chapel near the well where no one drank. The bride wore a veil made from her grandmother's curtain. It smelled of mildew and forgotten songs. Her feet were bare, and her hands trembled like the leaves of the fig tree when storms gathered. Alma didn't understand what marriage meant. She had never seen a man touch a woman with gentleness. She had only seen dogs mount in the field, and women cry behind doors. The groom, Lord Marek, was his beard was gray at the edges, and his teeth were too white for someone who never smiled. He spoke in slow commands, like a general to a dying soldier. His castle loomed over the village like a scab that would not fall off. And on the wedding night, Alma was carried there in silence, inside a wooden cart used for pigs. No one warned her what would happen. They said it would be like falling asleep and waking up a woman. But when the door locked and the candles were snuffed, it was not sleep. It was tearing, splitting, a red baptism upon white sheets. He did not speak to her, not even once, only groaned. And when it was done, he threw her shift into the fire and left. In the morning, the maids whispered about her. Did she scream? Did she bleed? One woman counted the stains on the linen as if they were coins. Another clucked. At least she's fertile. Alma sat on the bed, legs open like a cracked book, staring at her hands. She still looked like a child, but something had been taken, something without name. Weeks passed, and the house swallowed her. Alma was not permitted to walk beyond the east wing. Her meals were brought on silver trays too heavy for her arms. The servants called her Milady, but not with respect and more like a joke. No one taught her what to say, or how to sit, or how to hide her fear. So she simply drifted a doll in a too large house, with shadows that grew long and hands that were always too rough. When her belly began to swell, no one congratulated her. They only measured her like cattle. Her skin stretched thin, her bones groaned, and her eyes grew dim with something too ancient for a child to carry. In the nursery, the cradle stood empty. They filled it with lavender, not love. She never touched it. By the time the midwife came, Alma had not spoken in days. Labor tore through her like wolves through lambskin. The pain was not pain, it was punishment. And when the baby came, it did not cry. A girl, pale, still, forgettable. The maids took her away before Alma could even see the curve of her mouth. They buried the infant at dawn. No name was spoken, no prayer, no stone, just soil and silence. Lord Marek did not attend. He returned to Alma that same night, and when she begged, "Please, not again," he replied only with a sigh, like someone sighing before feeding a dog. Alma gave birth 6 more times, 3 girls and 3 boys. None of them lived past the hour when sparrows turned to roost. With each loss, Lord Marek grew colder, more distant. He avoided her gaze, as if her sadness might catch and infect him. But Alma understood something he did not, a life within a life, even if unseen, unheard, unbroken. That which had been taken from her, taken violently, carelessly, kept growing. Each miscarriage, a small revenge. She nurtured the weight of their absence, letting it bloom into a power that wrapped around her heart like armor. She bore the scars of her losses, not on her body, but in the depths of her knowing. A silent war waged within her, a battle between the quiet strength that bloomed with each passing month and the grief that threatened to consume her. Though the castle walls echoed with the ghosts of her children, Alma refused to be broken. Their spirits intertwined with hers, weaving a tapestry of resilience that defied the darkness closing in. The years slipped by like slithering snakes. Alma grew older. Still, a spark of defiance flickered in her eyes. She had outlived Lord Marek. He had been laid to rest beneath a fig tree, the only place in the vast castle grounds where the soil was not choked with the memory of her children. Now the servants called her the old crone, and they were not wrong. But hidden beneath the layers of hardship, a strength had been forged. One day a young maid stumbled into Alma's chambers, her face pale as winter. "Please, mistress," she whispered, dropping to her knees. "My child, she is ill. No fever will break her." Alma felt a pang, a ghost of empathy for the terror mirrored in the maid's eyes. She knew that look. It had been her mirror for 5 years ago. Alma rose slowly, her joints aching like a forgotten language. The castle, once imposing, now appeared frail, its grandeur reduced to dust motes dancing in the stale air. The young girl cradled in Alma's arms was feverish, her breathing shallow, her skin clammy. Alma closed her eyes, reaching back to a time when she, too, had cradled a babe, whispering forgotten lullabies. Time had eroded most of her memories, but some, like this, remained etched in the caverns of her soul. As dawn painted the sky with hues of lavender, Alma stood by the window, her gnarled hands gripping the sill. The familiar ache of loss resonated within her, a constant companion. Yet today a new sensation surfaced, something akin to resolve. She turned from the window, her gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the remnants of lives lived and lost. Among these ghosts Alma saw not just tragedy, but strength. Each shadow, each whisper was a testament to her survival, a silent cheer echoing through the corridors of her heart. A single tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek, mingling with the dust that had become her only solace. This was her story, a saga spun from loss and resilience, and it was far from over. What is this obsession with naming everything? Why must everything have a name? Is it because we assume things have lives like us, or maybe because we think giving a name to an object gives us the right to treat it however we want? This story starts with Alma. She was 13 when her second pregnancy began, not from love, but from repetition. Hands that were never gentle, nights that never asked permission. Her body had become a vessel, a garden planted by strangers, expected to bloom without sunlight. This time, they did not lock her in the shadowed chamber. They placed her in the middle room where light filtered through stained glass windows like diluted blood. One evening a man came in. He was tall, thin, with slicked back hair. His lips were red, his clothes smelled of wood smoke and spice. He brought her wine and honey cakes, then sat beside her bed and spoke of the outside world, of markets filled with treasures, beggars sleeping beneath bridges, of roads leading to distant lands, of dancing girls and sweet songs. For a moment she thought he might be her salvation. Perhaps he would take her from here, let her see the world instead of just hearing about it. But then he took out a silver coin and placed it on her belly. "A dowry," he said. "Enough for a village girl, perhaps. Too little for you." He stood up, smoothing his clothes. "You should thank the Virgin that it is all you will need. Now leave me." He strode toward the door. "And do not speak a word of this to anyone. Is that clear?" At the door, he paused. "I will come for you after the child is born. Until then, don't speak a word to anyone about our meeting. Do you understand?" She nodded, though her throat was tight with unshed tears. When he had gone, Alma touched her belly. It felt hard and cold. She understood now what the coin had bought, what this man had given her. It was another night with strangers. They took her to the baths that night, scrubbing her body until it was raw and pink. Then they wrapped her in a coarse linen dress and led her to a shadowed chamber. There was a mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner, a bowl of water on a small table, and next to it, a single candle. When they closed the door, the darkness seemed to press against her, alive and watchful. Fear turned her legs to water. She sank to the mattress and curled into a ball. She stayed like that for hours, or perhaps minutes, time having no meaning. Then she heard footsteps. Someone entered the room, tall, heavy. The man did not say a word. He knelt beside her and pulled her dress over her head. The touch of his mouth was bruising. She cried out, tried to push him away, but he silenced her with a hand over her mouth. Afterward, when he was done, he got up and left the room. Alma was left shivering, tears streaming down her face. She tried to stand up, but her knees buckled. The world swam before her eyes. She fell back onto the mattress, a sob escaping her lips. She couldn't remember if she'd ever loved, never chosen. She'd never even named the child within her. What did it look like? Was it a boy or a girl? Would it have hair like hers or eyes like his? Would it hate her as much as the other children hated her? Her hands shook as she closed her eyes. She wanted to scream, to break something, to make some sound so that someone, anyone, would come and help her. But no sound came out. Her voice was lost. The child lived, boy, they said, but they didn't let her hold him. They took him while the cord was still warm. A woman dressed in black, perhaps a wet nurse, stepped forward and whispered, "He will be well cared for. You needn't worry," then disappeared, as if the hours of agony were only a passing storm. Alma was left alone, trembling, soaked in sweat and afterbirth, with no name to whisper, no warmth in her arms. From that day, no one called her child again. She became young lady, the future matron, vessel of the Merrick bloodline. Titles bound her like iron links, each one burying her name deeper. They taught her how to sit upright, how to stay silent, how to smile through the bleeding. They taught her to be grateful when woken at midnight by the knock of a man she didn't love, didn't choose, and didn't dare deny. She was pregnant a third time before turning 14. This one brought pain that reached into her bones. The child writhed like a hooked fish beneath her ribs. She vomited blood. Her gums bled. The child died in the womb. They wrapped it in gray cloth and dropped it into the well behind the orchard. "It's better this way," said one of the older maids. Alma didn't reply. She only stared at her own hen-skin. She birthed her fourth child in silence. No one told her its name or its sex. They simply carried it away. Too much attachment is dangerous, they said. A breath had never learned how to stay. She gave up asking questions. By 15 she had birthed 5 times. Her hips ached like old hinges. Her teeth loosened. Her hair fell in handfuls. Yet the midwives praised her. "Blessed womb," they whispered. "Fertile as spring." But Alma felt only winter, only hollow, only silence dressed in linen. The walls began whispering. First in murmurs, then in names. Names she'd never been told, never allowed to give. She whispered back. "You're not forgotten," she told the shadows. She sang lullabies to empty corners. She began to believe the nursery she was never allowed to enter was haunted not by ghosts, but by the unlived lives of those who had passed through her. Her 6th child came in the high summer. The windows were shut against the heat. Bees buzzed like a funeral song in the rafters. Alma bled for hours. When she awoke, someone said, "You'll live." No one said, "What happened to the baby?" But she'd heard a door lock 3 days later. It was opened again without a word. She began to dream. In her sleep, children without faces ran through the halls, calling her name. She woke with the taste of dirt on her tongue. Once she saw herself in the mirror, old, her hair white, carrying something heavy and cold through a corridor that had no end. She told her dream to the blind laundress. The woman placed a hand on Alma's cheek and whispered, "You've given birth 7 times, but your heart has never been born." The words haunted her more than the pain. Alma began to wonder, what is love, if not the chance to hold something close and call it yours? And if no one ever gave her that chance, had she ever truly lived? On her 17th birthday, Alma bled for 3 days and did not die. The physician called it a miracle. She called it a failure. Her womb had begun to rot from the inside, at least that's how it felt. Every step was a weight, every breath a betrayal. Her eyes had sunk deeper into her face, ringed by bruises no hand had struck. But the house, ever hungry, was not done with her. Lord Marek fell ill in the winter. His lungs filled with something black, and his voice faded into a rasp that echoed like rusted chains dragging across stone. She stood by the window and watched the snow fall like bones. When he died, the servants wailed as if he had been kind. Alma stood in silence, her lips pressed together like a wound. She had wanted to love him, once when she was still too young to know what love was. Now, he was only a shadow cast on her spine, a tremble in her wrists that would never leave. She was a widow, but not free. Marek's brother, Caspar, came for the estate. A lean man with a serpent's mouth and a voice like syrup poured to slow. He looked at Alma on their first night, and on the second day, he took her to the same bed where his brother had died. He smelled of dust and wine, and he spoke to her during the act not with affection, but with scripture, as if defilement was a sacrament. Alma's body wept, but her face remained still. She had learned to leave it behind, like a dress shed before fire. The 7th pregnancy came fast. It grew like a weed in poisoned soil. Her body had forgotten how to carry life gently. Her belly twisted with cramps that bent her spine. Her skin peeled, her teeth loosened. The midwife whispered the word ectopic like a curse. "It won't survive," she said. "Neither will she." Caspar refused to hear it. "She has birthed 6. She can birth 1 more." Alma lay in a bed that smelled of salt and iron, listening to the rain knock against the windows like the fists of buried children. She begged the nurse to end it, to let her slip away before the final tearing. But no one moved. No one answered. The pain became a river, and she was swept beneath it. Hours bled into hours. Her hands clutched the sheets, not from agony, but from longing for someone, anyone, to hold hers back, to say her name like it mattered. No one came. The child did not come either. Only fever, only rot. Alma began to see fire in the corners of her vision. She saw the dead children lining the walls, reaching out with mouths full of flowers. She whispered their names, the ones they never had. One by one she gave them voices. As her own began to fade, she did not sleep, she hovered. And somewhere deep inside her, a final thread snapped, not from pain, from the knowledge that she had never been loved, not once, not even by herself. "So you just survived a disaster. Congratulations, you made it through hell, and you've got the scars to prove it. But hell is also your new home, so now what? Will you build a shelter, gather food and water, and then make sure that no one else finds you, because this is Hellblade 2.8. Hellblade 1 and 2 are some of the best games ever made. So it should be no surprise that we're re-excited for Hellblade 2. You can pre-order it today and play it when it launches in early access on August. She turned 17 the same week her 7th pregnancy began. There was no celebration, only the rusted bell from the chapel tower, groaning in the wind like something forgotten. Alma hadn't seen the sky in months. The shutters were always drawn now, to protect your condition, they said. But she knew the truth. Her face had grown too pale, too thin. Her eyes no longer looked like a bride's, but like a mother of the dead. They hid her so the house would not remember what it had done. Her belly swelled as if her body were trying to escape itself. She could no longer stand without help. Her spine bent, her breath shortened. Each night her dreams were full of knocking soft, constant knocking from the inside. "Let me out," the voices said. "Let us all out." The maids began to fear her. They left meals on the floor, never speaking her name. Even Lord Marek hadn't returned since the 6th. Alma no longer missed him. She no longer missed anything. Even pain had begun to feel like memory. But something in her stirred a strange defiance, too small to be rebellion, too quiet to be hope. She began pressing her hand against her belly, not in love, but in warning. "Don't come into this world," she whispered. "There is nothing here for you." Now, I know what you're thinking. Pregnant, what happened to her husband? Did they forget about him? Well, if you don't mind, we'll re-gone. Now skip ahead just a little bit, and I'll tell you exactly what happened to him. So fast forward, way forward, like if you skipped every other page in this book, then skipped every other page in the next book, then kept doing that until you finished. Got it? Good. Now where were we? Oh yes, talking about Lord Marek. Well, he had a pretty terrible fate. His sister Isadora poisoned him. That's how he got the 6 children. Now, why would she do such a thing? Well, she wanted the land. See, when Lord Marek died, his title and lands would pass to his only surviving relative, his sister's son, Sarim, but Isadora didn't want a boy to inherit the family name. So she gave their brother poison, making it look like a sickness. Then she took those 6 babies and secretly drowned them, leaving Alma to take the blame. Well, now that we're caught up, let's go back to the story. Alma no longer missed anything. Even pain had begun to feel like memory. But something in her stirred, strange defiance, too small to be rebellion, too quiet to be hope. She began pressing her hand against her belly, not in love, but in warning. "Don't come into this world," she whispered. "There is nothing here for you." Years passed, or perhaps it was only months. Time had become elastic, stretching and shrinking at will. One day a raven landed on the windowsill. It stared at her with one jet eye, tilting its head as if listening to something beyond her hearing. The bird opened its beak. Something glistened at the back. Not eyes, she thought. Not yet. Still, the raven's arrival stirred something deep inside her, something akin to fear. Maybe it was the look in the bird's eye, or maybe she had simply seen too many omens in her dreams lately. Omens of wings and talons and beaks dipped in blood. Alma rose unsteadily. The raven took flight. She followed it, her bare feet patting softly on the flagstones, hardly daring to breathe lest she draw attention. And now let's jump ahead once more, farther this time. We're going to skip over several chapters worth of plot, including an assassination attempt, a visit from the Queen, and a creepy old man trying to buy her unborn child. And we're going to end up with Alma in the woods surrounding the Marek estate. She moved between the trees like a wraith, her limbs spidery and delicate as she stumbled into the forest. The silence pressed upon her thick and heavy. It was a presence in itself, pressing her deeper, driving her onward. And suddenly she stopped. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide with dawning horror. The trees ahead had formed a circle, the branches interlaced overhead to form a canopy that blotted out the sun. At the center, a clearing and a mound of freshly turned to earth. New mound. Beneath the trees, shadows stirred. Figures cloaked in gray emerged from the gloom. They walked silently, their faces hidden by the hoods. They had come for her. They had known where to find her. Why? Because someone had betrayed her. Someone she trusted. She felt it in her bones. But who and why? Their eyes, dark and fathomless, fixed upon her. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped her heart. They advanced, their silence pressing in like a physical force, closing ranks, cutting off any hope of escape. Panic clawed at her throat, but no sound escaped her lips. She wanted to run, to scream, to disappear into the tapestry of the trees, but her feet were rooted to the ground, her body rigid with terror. As they closed in, she saw movement at the edge of the clearing, a figure detached from the others. He stepped forward, his hood falling back to reveal the face of young Saran, his cheeks hollow, his eyes hard and cold. Betrayal, sharp and sudden, pierced her. But why? What had she done? And then she understood. They weren't here to kill her. They were here to take the baby. They wanted her child. But if you want to know what happens next, well then you're going to have to wait until August when Hellblade launches in early access. And if you want to get the most out of Hellblade 2, we recommend playing Hellblade 1 first. It'll help you understand the lore and appreciate the story even more. But you should probably hurry. Hellblade 1 leaves Game Pass on August. You can check out our review of Hellblade 1, which will help you decide whether or not it's worth your time. If you'd like to learn more about the creative team behind Hellblade 2, we've got you covered there too. So click here to get started. This is one of the saddest stories I've ever heard. In 1963, a young girl was born in a small village in South Korea. She grew up without a name, without a family, without a country. You see, she was the product of a secret tryst between a Japanese soldier and a Korean woman, and when the news of her birth reached the village elder, they made a decision. They took her away from her mother and put her up for adoption. As the years passed, Alma's name became a whisper, a memory fading into oblivion. But every night, when the wind howled through the village, people would swear they could hear her soft knocking, like a plea from a forgotten soul. To this day, Alma's story serves as a reminder that some lives are lived in shadows, and some tragedies are written not in ink, but in silence. If you want to hear more stories like this, stay tuned.